Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Now, the trial in France documenting the sexual abuse of Gisèle Pelicot by her husband Dominique and 50 other men at his invitation has shocked the world, but it has also, some would argue, shifted the shame from the victim to the perpetrators. Gisèle has insisted that video footage of her abuse be made public so that the world can, in her eyes, look rape in the eye. So could this trial bring about significant change? Joining us this morning is a journalist based in France, Jamie Smith-Maillet. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Kaye.
Good morning. We're also joined by the Centre Director for Lanarkshire Rape Crisis, Helen Provan. Morning, Helen.
Morning, Kaye.
Good morning. And Ellie Wilson, who is a rape survivor and campaigner. Hi there, Ellie.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Jamie, what impact has this ongoing trial had in France? I mean, it has broken beyond France. I think the world is watching it, but within France's borders, what impact has it had?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to say is the scale of the trial itself and the case that's being studied with, yes, some 50 men overall. There are alleged to be 80 men in total involved, but 50 taking the stand, including her ex-husband. So the scale of the case itself has really shaken France, and that all comes back to Gisèle Pelicot herself deciding to waive her right to anonymity in this case. And as you just said there, she wanted basically the guilt, the shame to switch from the victim to the perpetrator, and that was one of her initial elements there, pushing her to waive her anonymity. So what it has done, it has led to a lot of people in France, right throughout feminist movements and beyond, to congratulate her, to say how brave she was in any case for taking this step. The case itself is complex. There are 50 men taking the stand, and it's due to last up to 4 months. We're just into the second month of the case now due to this complexity. So that itself for her is a really daring and courageous step that a lot of people are saying.
How by her actions, by Gisèle Pelicot's actions, how unusual has it made this case? I mean, had it followed a more normal path, how would it have been seen?
I mean, in some ways, it's not the first time that someone has waived their right to anonymity in cases like this, but it is the scale of itself, of the case itself, which really sets it apart. The difference in some cases, to imagine this case with these 50 alleged accused, the case being essentially behind closed doors, and there wouldn't be as much public interest or media interest in the case today. What it has brought about is a number of discussions. A discussion, first of all, in the legal definition of rape in France, which differs slightly to the UK, including Scotland, in which the principle of consent is not enshrined into the definition of rape. It is basically on the intent of the perpetrator to carry out the sexual violence where it lies. And that's a broader discussion legally. But beyond that as well, this does go back into the fight that really started, perhaps you could say, with the Me Too movement and the struggles against the wider issues of rape culture. The final element to mention is that the case has revealed the alleged accused are men from all walks of life.
Yeah.
We have firemen and a journalist among them, all sorts. So it's, as many are saying, the Monsieur Tout le Monde, the Mr. Everybody could potentially be a sexual perpetrator or rapist. And that is what is perhaps so shocking in this case, for many being so mediatised in many ways.
I mean, just the symbolism of it, I mean, I've followed it quite closely, and even if it is on the news, and let's say you've got the sound turned down and you don't particularly have the detail of that day, you look up and you see this woman, and I think Gisèle is in her 70s, and she is standing head held high with a very sort of determined look. She's usually dressed impeccably, as we tend to think of French women being. I don't know if that is a good stereotype or not, but she looks incredible, and then you see this random lump of men generally who have hoodies on, who have masks on, a lot of them, whose shoulders are hunched and who are avoiding the cameras. And the symbolism of that, and let me bring in Helen on this one, I think is very powerful. Would you agree, Helen?
It is. I mean, I think there's been a huge response and reaction to the portrayal of this case, and people have been focusing on these sort of, everyday men who are now facing trial, and of course Giselle has been kind of lauded in some ways as being a kind of spearheading this second part of this movement to say, the shame is not hers. She did not ask to be in this situation, and she is absolutely showing huge amount of dignity and courage in conducting herself this way. Although, of course, that takes a lot of energy to do that, and it obviously will be completely traumatic to have all this revealed. What happened to her and what was perpetrated against her.
And of course, the shame should never be on the victim. To a certain extent, the fact that we're having this discussion shows you how out of whack we are with it. It should never be with the victim. But Ellie, if I can bring you in here as someone. I mean, how is a rape survivor, and the perpetrator, I think, received 5 years, a 5-year jail sentence. Did you feel a sense, or did you feel the system asked you to feel a sense of shame?
I felt totally shamed throughout the entire criminal justice process, and I think particularly by the actions of the defence. I was appalled because I felt like I was the one on trial. We're talking about Giselle Pelicot speaking publicly and waiving her anonymity, which is such a powerful thing. And when I waived my anonymity, I had the same motivation as well, because it's a scary thing to do. It's a really scary step to take. But ultimately, the shame should never be on the survivor. It should be on the perpetrators. And I think that the more that we can speak about these issues and women don't feel like they have to keep it secret, then that will help to shift the dial when it comes to who feels the shame.
At what stage in the proceedings did you decide to waive your anonymity, Ellie?
So I waived my anonymity after sentencing had taken place. I think obviously there are different laws in different parts of the world, but I think in Scotland, I don't know if it would be possible for a survivor to waive their anonymity in the middle of a case because, there's contempt of court, and that could complicate legal proceedings.
You said there that you did feel shame, during the trial. In what way? Where did that come from?
I think for me it was difficult for me to reconcile the fact that I knew what I'd experienced at the hands of my rapist, but then I was being told in court that all of this happened to me because my rapist was so in love with me, and actually I was the one in control, and all of my achievements as well were used against me after my rapist had been found guilty. I was told by his lawyer that it was an injustice that I had graduated with a first-class degree and a master's with distinction, sort of to try and shame me and say, well, you can't really be that traumatized if you've gone on to succeed academically. And that's enormously difficult to deal with because you feel like there's something wrong with you and not something wrong with the perpetrator.
And in fact, the defence lawyer in your case was fined, wasn't he, because he repeatedly crossed the line in his line of questioning, and a faculty of advocates committee found Lorenzo Alonzi's behaviour amounted to unsatisfactory professional conduct in 6 of 11 complaints made by you, Ellie, and the committee said he did not appear to clearly and unequivocally accept any wrongdoing or offer an unreserved apology. I mean, Helen, it shouldn't be on individual victims to try and change the way that a society sees sexual assault, should it?
No, not at all. I think we definitely need to take a different approach, a kind of public health approach to, challenging the sort of new epidemic of sexual violence. It really has taking up a huge amount of the work of police and courts and prosecution and yet it's actually consistently the lowest in terms of prosecution and conviction in Scotland. All of the other crime types, a lot of kind of political messages around, we're really addressing crime in Scotland and we're really doing well. But sexual offences are the one category which, really are on the increase now. Some people do feel strong to come forward, and quite a lot of women who access our centre even name Ellie by name and say, she's really inspiring. She's encouraged me to kind of come forward and get some support or consider reporting to the police. But also, as Ellie has mentioned, the experience of that can be really disempowering, and, the kind of justice system is not there. It's not designed around, someone who's experienced crime and has had something happen to them. That's not what it's designed to do, unfortunately. So we really need to kind of look at many, many aspects of change and how we can improve and have better outcomes for survivors.
So what do you think does need to change?
There's a lot of different proposals in the Victims, Witness and Justice Reform Bill at the moment, which are about ending the not proven verdict, because it's one of the only jurisdictions in the world that has this anomaly where there are 3 verdicts, 2 of which end in acquittal. And the research has shown that the not proven verdict is disproportionately returned in sexual offences cases. So there are lots of proposals around the justice system, which are really trying to address this imbalance and make sure that people have a fair access to justice in the same way as people who've experienced any other type of crime.
Ellie, what do you think needs to change?
That's a tough one to ask, because there's so many different things that do need to change. Obviously, there are issues within the justice system. I think that defence conduct really does need to be reined in. We have laws that regulate what can and can't be said in court, but the complaints process is so complex, and often there's prohibitive costs for court transcripts, so it's difficult to prove what's happened in court. So there's a lot that needs to be changed within the justice system, but I also think as a society we need to shift our discourse as well. I think that so often the small behaviours that often appear in the run-up to sort of bigger events of sexual violence go unnoticed. We're talking about rape culture, we're talking about misogynistic comments, we're talking about the way in which we view women. I think all of that really needs to be addressed as well.
Jamie, do you think a new conversation is taking place in France or not?
Yeah, I think the debate around the legal definition of rape is one that has definitely been triggered once again and opened up in public discourse. And the new Minister for Justice with the new cabinet here in France just in the last few weeks has said that he does want a parliamentary discussion on that. Beyond that, what we were hearing there from Ellie, notably, about the question of shame within court, and Gisèle Pelicot, real echoes there in many ways. Gisèle Pelicot, in the first few days of her trial, questioning who is on trial here, is what she was saying. And that was because the defence line looked into elements of her consuming alcohol, or perhaps libertine past in the 70s and 80s. And these things here, really beyond the mediatisation of this case, really are extremely taxing, trying for those on trial. So whether, again, these are similar questions in France, and whether those will change in the coming months as well, beyond the wider issues being shown in this case of possibly rape culture, are also being asked.
What conversations, and we'll have to watch the time, are you hearing in cafes and bars and school gates surrounding this, Jamie?
Yeah, there is much more open conversation around it. I think the mediatisation of the case has done a lot of good, perhaps even within schools as well, the beginning of how to treat this sort of issue, the bigger discussion on toxic masculinity. So there is a much more open discussion, I think, which maybe some will say is definitely healthy within society, but these sort of societal changes are slow and take time. So that's probably part of the bigger picture as well.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jamie. Thanks also very much to Ellie Wilson there, and also to Helen Provan from Lanarkshire Rape Crisis. Right, we are back after the news with our travel surgery. Get in touch with your questions for Simon.
On digital radio,
FM,
your smart speaker,
and on BBC Sounds.
BBC Radio Scotland.